pretty obvious that we live in a globally linked world where what happens locally affects us all. But we have few ways of understanding the global and the local at a global level. We don't really understand this because our industrial age ways of learning don't afford us this way of understanding local systems. How is it that a farmer in Vietnam raises chickens and takes them to market, just doing what he does every day, and can start a worldwide epidemic of bird flu? How is it that a street vendor in Tunisia can take his vegetables to the street to be sold and be forbidden to sell those vegetables and start Arab Spring? What are the social systems, the economic systems, and the political systems behind that? After all, he's just trying to make a living and get his family fed. What of the young boy in sub-Saharan Africa who's raising goats? And he's the 5th generation person to do so. But he's not able to do so because the desert is encroaching on that land that his ancestors have been raising goats for generations. And now he has to stop doing so because the goats can't grow. And his village, indeed his whole region, has to pick up and move somewhere else, destabilizing the region and destabilizing maybe an entire country, where the country is now politically unstable. These local things affect our whole world. We're so globally linked. These are the questions that began to bother me 30 years ago when I started working in the poorest of poor countries. And now an entire team of people are working on this with me. We're based here at Seoul National University. We're doing a pilot project in Zambia. We're joined now with Europeans, Americans, and people in South Africa. We're an entire team working on this. In order to solve this, we had to tackle 2 challenges. The first challenge was how to bring the local knowledge up to the global level. And the second challenge was how to create a sustainable system to do so. The first challenge, how to bring local knowledge up to a global level, is harder than you think. Because as it turns out, we have to challenge 2 highly ingrained systems in this world. The 2 systems will surprise you. 2 systems we all count on. And the first one is education. Because after all, education makes a different assumption. It assumes that all knowledge worth knowing is at the highest level, the expertise. Experts know what needs to be known, and they pass it down to the next level, and then to teachers, and then to students, and maybe students down to the illiterate people. That's the assumption of education. The assumption of foreign aid is the second one, that everybody should be living at the highest level, and that's the pattern that you pass down to the poorest level. So all living standards, all ways of being should be at the highest level, and that all knowledge from that should be passed down to the poorest people. So both assumptions assume that all knowledge at the bottom has no value. But I just told you of stories where we need to understand these local systems. And some of the local systems have real value. They're stabilizing whole communities, so those communities can live and survive. They have social systems and cultural systems that have survived for a long time. And some of them are highly resilient. We have great stories coming out of Africa of adaptations to global systems, of creativity. But some of them are too stressed, and then they create problems that go global. So how do we understand this? How do we create and understand the knowledge from the bottom and move it up to a global scale? That's the problem that we were trying to figure out, that our whole team is trying to figure out. So we began to create this and innovate. It's a very difficult problem. The first thing is we don't start out with a hierarchy. We start out with a global system. And this is how we do it. We assume that all these units can learn from each other, that local communities, local higher education students, university professors on a global scale, and global institutions all can learn from each other, that each one can be a learning organization. So we have a new higher education startup in Zambia. That the assumption is not just that they need to know what's happening at a global level, that global professors can teach them, but that they also learn from their local communities, that they can be in those communities and learn from those communities and understand not only what's working there and what the dynamics are, but also what the stresses are and what's causing to destabilize those communities. So they're learning actually from those communities. We're not sending in the global experts to the local communities because local communities have long learned not to talk to global experts. Just look at the problem of the US Census. Now, migrants will no longer talk to the US Census. And it's true. I did my dissertation at the World Bank on household surveys, and many people in these small communities will no longer give the right answers to the global experts. They've learned to say what they think the global experts want to hear. So we send students in who speak the local language, who understand the local values and the local structures. They talk with local communities, and we're building learning systems right into those local communities. Then the global professors talk with the local students. We're sending curriculum down, but we're also pulling curriculum up. As those students learn, as they build knowledge, we're building new curriculum based upon that knowledge. In fact, it's right up on the web. We have it and we're building it from those students. And as we accumulate this knowledge, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, we will start flowing it back up to global organizations, World Bank, World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, whoever's interested. So we'll accumulate this knowledge across the world. What's going on in local communities? What's unique to a particular community and what is global? What is similar across many communities? As we do so, we have to innovate learning, because I already told you that the old model of learning is everything comes from the top. But now we're innovating a whole new system of learning. Once we figure out how to do that well, we will export that to the rest of the world. We're going to be open source. We're not going to close this down. We know how to make it open source. Two of the experts working on this are knowledge economists, myself and another SNU professor. But we have educators, we have technologists, we have cultural specialists. So we're all trying to figure this out together. One of the people is sitting in the audience. He's a Zambian, and he's a doctoral student here at Seoul National. So the next question is how to make it sustainable. Because I already told you that the foreign aid system doesn't work very well. And this is not just my opinion. This is a growing opinion around the world. The old foreign aid system isn't working very well. Well, we got some clues from what's going on in the world. And so I'm going to show you some recent headlines. And let's see if you can pick up the clue yourself.
U.S. budget crisis hits home for Burma, Thai border refugees. New Zealand to hear appeal from climate change refugee. Europe's North Africa policy drowns in a flood of migrants. Uncertainty surrounds West Papuans deported to Papua New Guinea by Australia. New virulent HIV strain spreading rapidly through Siberia, identified by Russian scientists, accounts for 50% of new infections.
Could you see the pattern there? The world is paying a huge price socially, culturally, and in terms of monetary values for these global problems. And in fact, we did just one spreadsheet to figure this out. World Health Organization, it's in the millions and millions of dollars per year. That's one global organization. Countries all over the world, global organizations are spending billions and billions of dollars. In fact, we have 2 MBAs working on this. One of them is my top Korean graduate student. And we started putting the numbers together, but they were too big to put into this display. So we knew that if we can get this data together in a way that's not been put together by any other organization in the world, and I've worked for them all, I've worked for the UN, the World Bank, Harvard, whoever they are, none of them are doing this. Well, we can get dollars moving in. You can see from the chart, dollars moving into us because we'll have unique data. And of course, we're in Korea, we know how to do the technology, we can put it into great databases. That money can make our higher education students go to school for free. We can make that tuition free for them. But we think the money is great enough, we can pay them to go to school. How can we do that? Well, they're creating the knowledge. They're part of our knowledge source. They're part of what we do well. So we can probably pay them to be part in that community and collect our data. And we can pay for the learning centers in our local communities. And we'll have money left over to pay for our organization. That's one way. But we're vastly reducing the costs of these higher education and research centers. How are we doing it? Well, technology is helping. You can see this. Because at each step and each level, we don't have to fly everybody down all the time. We are importing some of the curriculum to these students through technology. I think we all know how to do that. But we don't do it just the old way, because our students actually apply it in local situations, and they also build their own curriculum. But we have special learning situations just for them. And we also will put this data up on the web into cloud systems so it can be analyzed at a global level, because the world is going to demand the highest quality of analysis. And then it will go on the web. So people can use it in certain open source possibilities. So the world can analyze this data and look at it and see the patterns. So we're reducing costs through technology. But the biggest way that we're reducing costs is knowledge exchange. It's knowledge economics. People will give you a lot of knowledge free of charge if they can get knowledge. It's a little hard to believe, but you do it every day. Do you use Google, Facebook, Twitter? You are exchanging knowledge free. Do you think Google wants to give you this just free of charge? No. They're giving you the service because you are also giving them knowledge. So probably 70% of Google's value that it generates every day never goes to market. It never shows up in dollars. It's generated through just knowledge exchange. In fact, this whole TEDx seminar is about knowledge exchange. So when we designed this, the other knowledge economists and I sat in front of whiteboards and at coffee houses and said, who do we need to be involved in this? And how can we pay them with knowledge? And so we don't really think our university professors will ever be paid. So far, none of them have asked for it because they have access to the best research, the best quality research, and the students who are going to write into the communities. And we can build research teams that are vertical, that go from the communities to the students, to the professors, and right up to the global organization. That's highly rewarding. And as we build our global curriculum, we not only get to collaborate, but it makes it a lot easier for us to build our curriculum right for our students in our own universities. So all of that makes it much cheaper to build this system, quite a cheap system. So we were able, we think, to solve these two problems. We're in the pilot phases. How to build a system that brings local knowledge up to a global level so it can be analyzed and looked at and stabilize these communities using their strengths and understanding when they're too stressed, and how to create a sustainable system that is an alternative to the old foreign aid system. But what we haven't completely solved, and the world needs to keep working on this, is to think about the fact that local knowledge is a key ingredient to solving global problems, and that collective knowledge is highly valuable in this global world. So from all of us, we have pictures here of us in Zambia and in Korea. We don't have the South Africans. Actually, I just met with them 2 weeks ago. And the Europeans and the Americans, they're just joining us. But here we are, and thank you for listening.